Hi, everybody, and welcome to a new edition of the End the Celts podcast. Yes, I'm delighted to be joined by another Belfast boy, Patrick McNally. How are you?
Very well, mate. Thanks for having me on. Big fan of the show, so
Yeah.
glad to be on.
No worries, man. I'm glad you listen to other podcasts. We're kind of up and coming, but we're getting there. I think about
Definitely.
9 weeks in existence now, but we're getting bigger followers on Twitter and Instagram and YouTube especially. So slowly but surely, a brick's in place. But we'll go on to what we're going to talk about today in terms of you playing for Celtic and your move. But before we get to all that, I want to go back to the very start. So in terms of the love of the game, love of football, for me it would have been in the street, playing with your friends with two jumpers down as goalposts. Was it pretty much the same for you at a young age?
Yeah, it was. Playing games like that, my earliest memories would have to be, I'd been going across to Glasgow watching Celtic since I was about 3. Obviously can't remember anything. That was obviously in the 90s, but my dad used to take me across probably every week, every second week. So if it wasn't at Celtic Park, it was at Solitude. So that was sort of my memories of football. And as you say, just kicking a ball a bit in the street and in school. But from a very early age, it was drilled into me, and I probably wouldn't have it any other way.
You're 100% right. At least you got somewhere. I just ended up on the streets playing football, and that's as far as it got for me. I was just totally shite. But I mean, how does it go from playing in the street to going to the likes of Cliftonville? How does that process take shape?
I suppose everyone's different. I played football on the street, obviously, throughout my whole youth. I was never big into the PlayStation or anything like that. I don't even know if it was about then. Probably a PlayStation 1 or something, maybe. But so I signed for a club when I was 9, like proper, like organised football. And I was signed for the Mac in West Belfast, and then went to New Hill. Then I played for North Belfast, which is a team in the New Lodger. And then there was 2 coaches that obviously doing rightly and playing away and enjoying it. Didn't really think much of it. I was just enjoying playing with my mates. And then there was 2 Cliftonville coaches. Cliftonville used to take a team to the USA Cup, like a select team. And then they approached me, Danny and John Clarkland, to go to America and play in the USA Cup for Cliftonville. And then when I came back, Danny was just straight on to me saying, "Do you want to come and sign permanently for us?" And that was it, really. I signed for Cliftonville then and never looked back, really.
What age was that?
I was probably about 13. Thinking back, I was probably about 13. And so I didn't actually stay at Cliftonville too long. Progressed pretty quick when I went to Cliftonville, to be honest. Everything started kicking off for me then. Whether it be probably more scouts going to watch their games and maybe local clubs, I don't know. But I just kind of kicked on when I went there.
And the likes of Cliftonville, their youth academy, like the structure side of things, was there like a clear development plan for as young as 13 years old?
Yeah, I mean, certainly for me, I think at the time it was Kyle Spears that was the head of youth at Cliftonville. Jared was still there, Jared Lawler. So, so Kyle looked after that. My 2 coaches were obviously, Danny and John, who were absolutely different class. I don't even think the 2 lads do it anymore, which is a shame because they were different class with me and everyone else. But started playing there quickly, sort of was playing in my own age group, and then before you know it, you're getting pushed up to the older age group, and then you're getting pushed into the youth team, and then ended up even playing some games for the reserves when I was about 15. So if they see something in you as a club, even back then, like they were certainly trying to push you through the ranks pretty quick, it's only going to benefit me, and it did, to be fair, long term,
Yeah, I mean, I myself, I'm not going to pretend to say I'm a big Cliftonville supporter, but I've been to a few games. I've been to a couple of games where they've clinched the league title under the late great Tommy Breslin. I've seen some celebrations, and I was actually at the Cliftonville Celtic game when they're over. But as you said, when you were in the youth with Cliftonville, when you first signed for them and things kicked on, so the progression route, how quickly were you doing for free each age group? Was it just bang, bang, bang?
So the first one, I don't think it did the first year, and then I think the second year when you're kind of under 14, 15, I was playing regularly in the international squads and going to the Euros at under 17 level and 19s and stuff like that. But so I started playing. So basically, I know we were actually talking before the call about playing as many games as you can as a kid. So I used to play on a Friday night for Cliftonville youth team or the reserves at Solitude, and then on the Saturday morning I was up in Lisburn playing for the under 15s. So played a game for the reserves or the youth team, whatever it may be, and then on the Saturday morning I was back playing with my own age group. So I'd basically done that loads. I don't know how I could never do it now, but as a kid you could run all day. So and it was amazing. So what else would you want to do other than playing? And then obviously I was putting myself up against a lot of older lads on the Friday, and then obviously when it came to Saturday, it was making that playing against my own age that wee bit easier. You know what I mean? So,
I know what you mean. When you're younger, you can run for days, and I look at my daughter now. She runs about the room, never out of breath, and I'm going, I wish I could do that. I'd be on my face if I'd done that. But like, see the way that, as you said, you're playing on the Friday, you're playing on the Saturday. And you touched upon the international side of things, like going to Euros with, I'm guessing, Northern Ireland at that time, the under 17, under 18 level.
Yeah.
So the international experience as well, how much did that help you?
It was brilliant because, as I say, I was speaking about being at Cliftonville as a kid there. I started going across to a lot of English teams, back and forth on trial. And you're obviously, from 14, it was basically travelling back and forth to England at different clubs. And you're basically trying to gear yourself up to get yourself a contract. So when you're 16, I mean, I wasn't great in school and I certainly didn't want to stay on in school. So here's me, I'll have a wee go at this football lark and see where it takes me. So so I was playing football and I just basically wanted a contract. So it was great. So it was actually back and forth and I had a couple of the offers lined up and stuff. And it was actually when I was away playing for Northern Ireland, a few of those opportunities arose for me, and none other than obviously the Celtic opportunity that came from me playing an international game away. So so I've a lot to sort of thank for it. And in terms of develop, you're playing against the best players of that country. Do you know what I mean? You're playing against the best they have. So even with things like concentration, you can never ever switch off. You know, the level's higher. Depending on what nation you're playing against, some of these players were absolutely ridiculous. It was some step up.
Name one.
Well, we played Spain in the Euros, and as much as I can't remember too many individuals, my God, we could be a 5-1. And Ram McLaughlin gets sent off after 20 minutes, and Ram is our best player. So you're just thinking, wow, here we go. They ended up getting beat 5-1. I think Gerard Deulofeu scored a hat-trick that game, and he went on to play for AC Milan and Watford he played for. So things like that. And at that time, I was still playing part-time for Cliftonville. I was training twice a week at Solitude, so to put that into perspective, he was training with Barcelona's first team, I'm near sure at that time. So, but I mean, it's great to even come up against that. Do you know what I mean? It's memories and experiences that you'll probably never forget. Like,
yeah, I mean, the likes of the Spain squads, and you're playing against their best ages at that level anyway. And Deulofeu, he's lightning fast. He's a menace, especially running towards defenders and things, especially in the Premier League. You see some cracking clips of him in the match a day sometimes. But going back a wee bit, you touched upon that the international scene brought you to like different clubs in England across the water. And was there any club that was close to taking you on before you went to Celtic?
Yeah, I was probably up, as much as it wasn't signed or anything, I probably had in my head that I was going to sign for Hull. I was back and forth like all the summer breaks, Easter breaks from school. I used to go across and spend my week or week and a half over in England at Hull. So I was very, very close to signing for them. And Leicester and Stoke also offered me a contract to go over too. So I was very, very lucky in that I had options even before Celtic came in. But once they did come in, then there was obviously there was only one team I was going to sign for, like, and that was obviously Celtic. Because, as I say, I come from a mad Celtic family, and Celtic daft myself, even still now. So there was only one winner there, and as I say, I was very, very fortunate and lucky that sort of opportunities arose for me at those times.
Yeah, and touched upon as well. You mentioned that Celtic actually watched you in one of your away international games. Can you remember what game that was?
Yeah. So I think we were playing Slovakia away, and as I said, I mentioned Hull there. I'd obviously been back and forth a lot. So on the international team sheets, they'll give your name and right beside it what club you represent. And on the team sheet, my name obviously, and then beside it, I obviously thought it was going to say Cliftonville because I was never on a pro contract or anything there. It said Hull, but I was actually unattached. So the Celtic head of youth, Chris McCart at the time. Chris obviously still is Celtic's head of youth now in Ayrshire. He was there watching Paul George, who was at Celtic at the time. Georgie's a good mate of mine. So we were on the plane on the way back, and Georgie's come up on the plane and says, "Here, Chris is only off the phone to me. He wants to bring you over to Celtic." But I thought he was obviously taking a piss out of me, like, "Here's me out there on cracker." And he says, "No, serious, mate." He says, "On the team sheet it says you're obviously at Hull," but I told him obviously you hadn't signed anything. So about a week later, I went over and played a game against Hibs at Barfield, and that's when I started going back and forth at Celtic.
That's amazing. So basically, all started from you think you get your wind up call by Paul George.
He walked up the plane, and I was sitting at the front of the plane. He was at the back, and he says, "Chris McCart was on the phone. He wants to bring you over and have a look at you." And I was like, "Oh, no way!" And then it turned out it was true. So they contacted like my parents and Cliftonville, and then I went over to Celtic and probably got invited back a couple of times, 2 or 3 maybe, and then they offered me a contract to come over permanently the summer after. So I was over the moon, delighted. Like,
so, see, before you took them steps when you're joining Celtic, you're going over on a weekly basis, doing training and playing some games against clubs. The likes of like Chris McCart, I've heard a lot of stories about Chris McCart, especially from former players saying he's a great influence and he's great with the youth. Did you have any personal experiences with him?
Yeah, I mean, Chris dealt with everything. Whether it be the contract, making over, even when it was over, you're only a kid, really, or a baby. So he always checked in on you. Chris was very tough. Chris tested you mentally. Very, very good. I never understood it at the time, but I remember when I was a pro then, a couple of years later at Lennoxtown, I spoke to him about it. And one of the things he always used to say was, the reason he's like that on the kids is because if he doesn't prepare you mentally to be a football player, especially at Celtic, he goes, if you can't, handle me sort of criticising you or giving you constructive criticism from the side, how are you going to handle 60,000 people doing it if you're lucky enough to go and play in our first team? So that was probably one of the best bits of advice I've ever got in football, to be honest. Obviously, as a kid, it's very natural that you're going to start feeling sorry for yourself at the time, but I think it helps, like, even, coming from here, and I kind of had them experiences anyway, so it didn't bother me too much, but I always look at that bit of advice, and it's something I carry with me. But obviously brilliant, very, very, as a, standards through the roof, demanded the best every day, and believe me, if you weren't doing it even in training, you were found out about it, like, and he called you in and let you know. So, but no, overall, probably, a very great, a good influence. Ultimately, he's the one who let me go, but I learned an awful lot
at the
from
time.
People like that.
Yeah,
exactly. You don't realize.
Sometimes, you don't realize what they're actually trying to do for you, and then once you come away from that situation, you're like, shit, that's what he was trying to do for me. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
But that's the way it goes sometimes. But see, touching upon the pressure and stuff, I used to crumble when a manager of my local team used to shout at me on the pitch. I used to fall into a shadow. I can only imagine what it'd be like for you guys. So you're coming over from Cliftonville and you're going to train with Celtic before you've even signed a contract. What's it like when you go and train at Barrowfield, like with all the younger players in the Celtics academy? Is the level just steps ahead?
Yeah, I mean, when you're training with Celtic, the level's night and day, have to be honest. As much as we have good individual players over here, see the actual tempo of the full session with all them players, it's night and day, and it takes us some getting used to. As I say, we do have, and we produce still to this day, we still produce cracking players from Belfast, but that was just a different kettle of fish altogether when I went to Celtic.
And see, in terms as well, like when you're first going over and you like the players and you're training on the pitch and you're getting used to your teammates, if you can remember, who stood out at that time, even before you signed a professional contract with Celtic?
Before I went over, Paul George stood out for me right away. He was incredible. Always remember, like, growing up playing against him. He was playing for Celtic boys, and always remember it. But when I went over there, Georgie was even head and shoulders over everyone over there, which I couldn't get my head around. So that's obviously a testament to how good he was. I think the young lad, I didn't know him, and certainly when I signed full time, he wasn't there anymore. When I was going over on trial a lot, your boy Islam Farouz was there, and he was, what a talent he was.
Yeah.
But off the top of my head, it's very difficult to say. I can't really remember. I was very, very focused on myself, trying to earn myself a contract. But obviously, we'll probably go on to speak about a few of the lads when they actually signed.
So, as you said, right, you're going over and you're focusing on yourself. You're doing the right thing, obviously, trying to get yourself your professional contract with the club you love. So, when they actually do offer you that contract, Patrick, what's the feeling? Like, talk me through it, because for me, I'd probably be bobbing like a little boy, crying my eyes out.
It was strange. Like, I was up at my girlfriend's house, and then when I come back down, so I was up in her house, and my dad phoned me and he was like, Stokesy's only away from the door. And I was like, what? He's like, oh, Anthony Stokes and Jerry was there. So Jerry was my agent at the time, and he also represented Stokesy. So Jerry brought the contract down and brought Stokesy down with him, which I thought was a great touch. But I wasn't even in. I was out. So when I came back down, my dad had the contract sitting there, and me and him just went over it, and it happened like that. But honestly, I couldn't believe it. Like, I was gobsmacked. As much as I knew I had a contract to go to in England, I just didn't think that I was going to go to Celtic, if you know what I mean. And maybe that's me just not having confidence in myself at the time, but I just didn't think that. I mean, just a huge club like that, like, and the club that I loved ever since I was a wee boy, like, it was some feeling, I have to be honest there.
It doesn't really strike me as something that having confidence in yourself, not being able to not go to Celtic. But what I would take from it, you had the contract offers on the table from England, but you're looking for that better option, and you're hoping Celtic come in. As you were going over on trial and stuff, and as you rightly said, you're focusing on yourself, and you want that to pay off. I wouldn't really say it was a confidence issue where you're doubting yourself, but obviously you're right. A big club like Celtic, you're thinking to yourself, you're a number in the door maybe, and they're not going to give you that contract, but when it comes, you're sitting just delighted, and you just want to sign it as quick as you can, I imagine, anyway. But see, when
100%.
Go ahead, sorry.
No. I'm just I was agreeing with you.
Yeah, no, but see as well, Patrick. So when you sign the contract, it always, like, I always want to know about it anyway. So what's the process? Do they move you into accommodation over in Scotland, or is it like a gradual process, moving over slowly but surely?
No, so I think that may have been, it was about 6 months. So I got offered this contract about 6 months before I even finished school. And then obviously you finish your term in school, and once you finish fifth year, I think I went over on the 1st of July and moved into with a family in Glasgow, or the outskirts of Glasgow. And that's it. You're just thrown right into it. And this is what I always say to people. People say, oh, is it gradual? You know, does your parents come over with you? No, they don't. You're just thrown into it. And you're basically becoming a man overnight. You go from being a wee boy to a man overnight, honestly.
Yeah.
And as much as football, you learn a lot in football. I mean, that was probably the biggest life lesson I've ever had as well. Yes, you're being looked after brilliantly by the families. And I stayed in a couple of digs when I was over there. But it's really, you're carrying that weight on your own shoulder, like, and it's up to you then you can go two ways. I mean, I got very homesick at the start, but you can either let that eat away at you and just give up, or eventually just have that in your mind that that's going to pass and look at the big picture. Thankfully, I did that. Yeah. It's easy saying it now, but it was tough at the time. But everyone just thinks you're over living the dream. You're playing for Celtic. It's tough. It's tough as a kid, but as I say, it was. Thankfully, I stuck it out, and about 6 months in, you're basically Glasgow's your home, and I love Glasgow. Very similar to Belfast. I always say it's a bigger version of Belfast.
It is, I think, in 4 main streets in Glasgow. That's the way it is in Belfast. So
that's exactly it.
See as well, Patrick, obviously what you said there actually strikes a chord with myself, because you look at the young players that go to Celtic and you think, wow, they've made it already, but you don't actually take into account what's going on in their own personal lives if they're homesick, especially if they're coming in 15, 16, 17. You just don't know. And I've heard Simon Ferry talk a lot about these, like, families that take players in and they stay with them in terms of the accommodation. But how does that actually work? Do you just get chucked in with a family without a process of getting to know them? You're just chucked in?
That's it. So I stayed in about 4 or 5 different digs when I was over on trial. You know, like you go and stay with a family for a couple of days when you're, or whatever it is that week. So stayed in a couple, but the one that I actually moved into, I don't think I had met previously. Maybe I'd stayed with them once. But anyway, it was free in. Great people, unbelievable people. Stayed there for about 6 months, and stayed with an Italian boy and 2 Irish lads. And then about 6 months, I actually requested to move digs. And it was nothing to do with the family that I was staying with. It was just I became really friendly with Owen O'Connell and Big Shane, who stayed in the digs up the road, and I just wanted to move in there because it just felt a wee bit more comfortable. You know, I was quite friendly with the lads, and so I moved in there. So actually, I had 2 families when I was over there, and they were both great, to be honest.
That baffles me because it's like you're going over and you're thinking, well, I was thinking you would get your own wee flat or something in Glasgow that the club would pay for, but
there's no way the club are letting you do that. There's no chance.
Well,
can you imagine the Irish boys going over there and getting handed a flat? We'd be back within 6 months.
6 days? I think 6 days. Around 6 months. I mean, what's this mess on the floor? These beer cans. But right, so you've signed the contract. You've signed the contract, right? So we're talking about Lennoxtown now. So the first day where you're a professional for Celtic Football Club, what's it like?
So the way it works at Celtic, you sign pro right away. There's no like scholarship or YTS what they do in England or they used to. You just sign a pro right away, and then I think the first year, we trained at Barfield. Could change at Celtic Park every day. Sorry, we trained at Barfield and got our lunch at Celtic Park every day in the Jackson Lounger. And then just went down the minibus to training, and then come back up and done the gym at Celtic Park. So that was like for the first year and a half. So, and then you eventually, I think the reserves and the first team train at Lennoxtown, and then you just eventually move up to Lennoxtown to train every day. Which again was another step up because sometimes you're getting called to train with the first team, and I'm not going to lie, like you think it's brilliant, but at the time when you get that shout to go and train with the first team, like you're an absolute nervous wreck, because you literally just have to run. You have to literally run from the bottom pitch to the top pitch where the first team train, and just join in. But then you're going from training with some of the lads to training with superstars, really, and boys who you idolised. Go ahead.
You mentioned there as well. So the standard when you go to Lennoxtown and you're training with the reserves in between the first team, what's that like? Is the intensity just mad? Is that what it is? It's just crazy.
Yeah, well, I always noticed more often than not you were getting called up to train with the first team because there was injuries or there were shorter numbers. Like it wasn't because you were getting pulled into the first team squad or anything. So, so you just had to go up and do your bit. But I always remember just the standard of training. The drive and the players, the train at a level was it really learned me something, opened my eyes up. Because you see all these lads around Lennoxtown joking and laughing and all, but see once to train, like you can tell why they're born winners and they win titles and cups year after year because they were just relentless. That's something I took with me, and I still try to apply when I'm playing football now. It's just really invaluable experience that you're getting the actual experience firsthand. Again, you don't realise that at the time, mate, until you're an eye and you're out injured for a year and you can reminisce a wee bit. Yeah. But no, it was brilliant, mate, and the standard was ridiculous. But see the standard off the pitch, that was probably one of the biggest things. So when we get up, we'll be out to say to Lennoxtown, out the back door, cleaning 40 pairs of boots for the first team after the train. We'll be drying their footballs if it's raining, pumping them up to the right temperature, getting the drinks for the first team ready. It was just you're just an apprentice, and you're basically there as the first team while you're there. But I don't know if that still happens. I'd be very disappointed if it didn't. But it certainly didn't do us any harm. Like, and looking back, it was an experience to remember. Like,
I mean, as you said, it strikes an eye like the modern day footballer. When you're looking now at the young ages, they don't really go through that, as you said, pumping up footballs, cleaning boots. It just seems to be a thing in the past, and I think for me anyway. I don't know about yourself personally, but I think that would be a good grounding experience. Is that what you thought of it?
Oh, completely. Don't get me wrong. See, at the time, it can be another way this year. But you have to do it. That's part of your apprenticeship, so to speak. I certainly think it is, and if I was to later in life be a head of youth, it's certainly something I would instill Again, it wasn't there. The coaches around the place, the kit men, we Hugh, our kit man in the 20s, and then you had John Clark, obviously, and there's guys, I guess, telling you to do something, you're going to do it. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So look, it stood me a good stead, and anyone that I've ever spoke to, it can do nothing but good for you. Again, it's about learning standards and having discipline, and that's all a big part of it. I don't think the kids do it now, to be honest. And as you alluded to, a wee while back, or he's saying used to crawl into a wee ball whenever you get cheered off from the sideline. It helps you deal with things like that. Do you know what I mean? Because I see some kids even coming and training with us now at the minute, and you're trying to give them constructive criticism during training and stuff, and they're just getting into a shell, and maybe that's not the way to deal with kids nowadays. But for me, it was just getting abuse hurled at you left, right, and centre, and it didn't bother me. So. But listen, that's each to their own.
I must be different from you then. That's why I didn't make it, Patrick. I crumbled. I literally crumbled into myself. But see before we move on to like the players you train with and characters and stuff within the team, I just want to touch upon Lennoxtown. I see pictures of it, and for me, it looks amazing. And no one ever really speaks about it in terms of facilities. But what's it like as a training ground and a facility? I was going to say the best. It's up there with the best I've ever visited. Like, I've played in different training grounds with Celtic. I think we with Celtic we played in the Next Gen series. We stayed at Sporting Lisbon's training complex, trained there. Was it PSV's? So we've travelled loads, and then I was over at Man United trial as well. But it's right up there with all those training grounds. Like, it's unbelievable, honestly. So you've obviously got all your pitches, your 3G pitches. You've got your indoor pitch. You've got your games room for the first team, the reserves, and whatever. You've media rooms. You've your canteen. I think there's like 12 changing rooms. So you've got your first team changing room at the back door, and then it's all the academy ones where the kids come in and train at night, and then the one close to the front door is the reserve one. In terms of facilities, everything's there for you to be a top player if you really want to. Like, I wish I had this knowledge at 17, 18, but you don't. You take it all for granted. But it's you have the tools there to become the best player you could possibly be. So there's no, and again, you've the right guidance as well, because some of the coaches at Celtic are phenomenal. I've seen recently like people coming on and giving John Kennedy a bit of flack, saying I don't want him to get the job and all. And as much as everyone's can give their opinion and they're entitled to it. John was one of my managers at Celtic, and in terms of like a man manager, and he put his arm around you, he coached you, he really cared about your development, not only the team winning, he really cared about you as a person as well. So these people that got around you, and you can't go wrong really. So it's in your hands really when you're there. But as I say, what a facility. It's probably only going to get better as well. Yeah, I think they actually are talking about improving and upgrading Barrowfield as well for the women's football. But thanks for letting me know that. I mean, I've always been fascinated by Celtic's training ground. There's not enough footage of it for me. It just looks fantastic. The pitches just look pristine. And I might just be a geek about them sort of things, but they just look amazing. And I'm one of them people as well, Patrick. I mean, in the podcast, I always say I don't want John Kennedy as manager. And I wouldn't be too disheartened if he departed Celtic. But I mean, if he can aid people's development, maybe keep him in the youth academy, maybe put him in there at some point. But for me, I just don't think John Kennedy is the answer now for Celtic. But instead of getting bogged down with the John Kennedy argument, I want to move on to some matches you've played in. Now, you said there you played in the Next Gen series in terms of staying with Sporting Lisbon in their facilities. What type of matches stick out for you taking part playing for Celtic?
I can't remember games I played this season. I've only played it and then I got injured. Yeah, I would probably say that tournament in terms of you got a real taste of what it was like to be a first team player, and I mean that in the sense that the first team play weekend football on the Sunday, then they play Champions League Sunday, Champions League Sunday, Champions League Sunday. See the mentality that you have to do to produce that week in, week out. It's incredible. I can never get my head around it. Like Scott Byrne, he's done that for so many years. Just a machine, just a born winner. So we got the experience that we travelled to different countries, stayed in nice hotels. Again, we stayed in the Sporting Lisbon one. We stayed in their training ground, so to have dorms, and that's where apparently like we were obviously getting the speech of them saying this is where Ronaldo and Nani and all obviously lived and stuff like that there. Nothing fancy. It was just literally a wee bedroom, wee small TV in a room. But I would probably say those games, in terms of, because you're traveling away, you're getting that real experience of doing that. And I know we've done it with international teams, but this was their sort of trips where you're away for 10 days. Whereas these were like, you fly over on the Monday, you play on the Tuesday, you fly back on the Wednesday, and you're in training Thursday, preparing for the game on the Saturday. So this is what as I said, either looking at people like Scott Brown, who's done it for 14 years solid and barely ever misses anything, plays with knocks, plays with injuries, has a pure mentality of just winning and succeeding. I was never that good. I was never nowhere near it. But if I can take a wee bit from even their mentality, then it sort of stands you in good stead that way.
Yeah. I think as you said, like the next gen series is like basically a mini Champions League, isn't it? For football.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're getting that experience, as you said, of traveling to these hotels, and it's kind of giving you that taste of what the first team do, the wearing the track suits, going to media conferences, playing in these games, staying in the nice fancy training complexes. But we'll move on to the types of players at Lennox Town that you train with. From your own personal point of view, what guys just stood out in your mind when you were training with them on the pitch, thinking, this is unbelievable, I'm training with these guys?
Are you talking about like some of the first team boys that might have been around there at the time?
First team boys, reserve players as well. Whoever stuck in your mind, or
there's a few. If you look at boys like, obviously Paul George was there and was very, very unlucky to get a serious injury. John Hearn, who's now playing at Larne. John's one of my good friend of mine. Jackson Irvine, who's went on to have a great career in football. Big Stu Finlay. Yeah. And then the one that sort of away stands out was Callum McGregor, just because he's went on to do. But I always says Callum McGregor, you couldn't get the ball off this boy in a phone box. Like I have still to this day never seen him give a ball away in training. And you know yourself, when you've got you're doing a session for an hour and 40 minutes, you're bound to give a ball away a few times. Nah, not him, ever. And Owen O'Connell, who's still one of my best mates to this day, and do you know Liam Henderson as well, who's playing at Italy now?
Yeah.
Hendo went up to train with the first team. He went to, I think Hendo left Barfield. Instead of going to the reserves, which is your natural progression, he just left Barfield and went straight to the first team. And
yeah,
I can remember watching him. I think it was in the gym one day, doing like just on the bike looking out the window. First team were training, and Hendo's running around demanding the ball off all the first team senior players, like demanding it, saying, "Give me the ball, give me the ball." And I was like, "Wow!" It shows you the mentality that we lad had, and there's no.
Yeah.
I mean, this is why they go on and have great careers. I mean, he's living a life now in Italy, and you know what a life he's set up for himself. So, boys they got there, you had Tony Watt, Marcus Fraser, I'm trying to name as much as I can remember here, but all lads who went on to do reasonably well, and even the boys that didn't go on to play football, they've done well in business and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And this is where I talk about standards. Celtic are turning you into a good person, a good human. If you get me, you're getting taught values, you're getting and like discipline and and how punctual you are. But you can carry these sort of things into any walk of life, and you'll do well. So. Players they got there were obviously all went on to do really well, and it was a pleasure to be there at the time. Like, and as I said to you before, the experience was mad. But when you go to train with the first team, the level just goes up even more. Then it would scare you. Like, I think at the time, this is going to be a massive name drop here. I can remember one of the sessions where Virgil was training, and my God, I can remember phoning my dad and just going, Celtic saying the Dutch centre half here, and like he's getting the ball for goalkeeper in training and taking the pass players and putting balls in the top corner. Like, how's this possible for a centre half? So he just blew my mind. Things like that, it was great memories looking back. And as I say, as soon as you start talking about it, it all starts flooding back.
Yeah. See, touched upon some of the players you actually mentioned before we move on to the likes of Virgil. But like Jackson Irvine, I always thought that he was a cracking player. When he played for Hull, he was decent, and then I think he's playing for Hibs now.
Yeah, he's back at Hibs.
And
He signed
then
there
yeah,
January, I think. Mm-hmm.
and
But
then
in
Liam
terms of
Henderson.
yeah, again, what a
What a
player.
what a player. Left foot, like I could open a tin of beans with it. Like I thought he would stay at Celtic for years. I don't understand why they let him go. And then
That's
obviously
one.
you've got the likes of Tony Watt.
Yeah, he's went on to have a good career as well. Marcus Fraser as well. Marcus is playing every week for St Mirren. He was captain of Ross County and stuff there. John Hearn has done really well as well. He was very unlucky, so he went
John
down to
Hearn.
Blackpool and he's got a couple of real bad injuries. But John was very well thought of at Celtic.
Yeah, good.
And he's
good
now down
plug
at
for
Larne,
John
obviously.
Hearn because he'll be on the show. He's coming on the show, so he is.
Oh,
John
is
Hearn,
he?
which is
He'll
great.
be buzzing. I'd name drop them out, won't he? I think actually he played a few games in the first team, so he'd be a good one to get on. Actually, John.
Yeah, no, that's see as well. As a young player, right? These types of guys, Cal Mack's obviously the one that stands out in terms of he's went on to actually stay with Celtic and play. Like, as you said before we came on air, the 60 odd games a season this guy's playing. He never seems to break a sweat on the pitch. But see on the actual training ground with the first team players. So you mentioned Virgil van Dijk as well. What other guys were you training with at that point? And you're thinking, wow, this is unbelievable.
As I said at the time, you were very lucky to even get up the first team. And see, to be honest, like as I said, most of the time it was just when someone was injured or they needed numbers. But listen, I was happy to if I got the shout under those circumstances. The only one I've already spoke about him, but Scott Brown, like it's -20 in Glasgow, and I have a snood and hat and gloves and everything on, and this boy's walking out with a t-shirt and shorts on, and just on a skinhead. But just pure the look of steel. Like he just, as I say, he could just flip it when training started. He was just on it. I know he says he plays. You know, we've just went on about how good his career has been. Like, but day in day out, he produced this. Like, and I still can't get my head around how consistently he can do that. I suppose the top players are the only ones that can do it, and that's why they got all the accolades. But I would probably say he was the biggest standout, hands down.
Yeah. As you said, I think there was at one point Celtic went to Russia, and it was like -30 odds, and he was still wearing the t-shirt and the shorts, and you're going, what is wrong with him? Does he not feel the cold? He's been an absolute legend for Celtic Football Club, and obviously it's coming to the end of the season on the worst of circumstances as we didn't complete the 10, and it's just going to be a catastrophe. Do you know what I mean? But Scott Brown, for me, as you said, he just stands out. I mean, I'm 26, so he's been the best captain that I've ever remembered supporting Celtic. And he's been a constant in the team for the last 14 years since he signed from Hibs. And them type of guys are like a dying breed as well in the game. And you go from Scott Brown and who you're going to end up with. But I'm actually glad you mentioned Scott Brown. It brings me on nicely to characters, even within your squad, because I'm sure that Tony Watt and Marcus Fraser, I'm sure they have some stories about them. But who was like the biggest characters or the biggest influences in the reserve teams and the first team? Obviously, Scott Brown is going to be the biggest for the first team, but in terms of the squad that you were mainly in,
hold on, it's a tough one. I think the likes of you had Georgie, who was chirpy and funny, and he was always with the jokes. You had John, who was a big character because John was the captain, so John led by example on the pitch. And then you'd Colin, who was just like, you know, the one-liner king, like would just come in with a few. But, and then obviously the likes of Tony. Owen O'Connell was a big character for me because Owen was probably my best mate that I met at my time at Celtic. Owen at an early age understood football in a way that I couldn't. Like he seen big pictures. And I couldn't believe it, but he always led by example on the pitch. Owen was always brave and took a ball under pressure. And for me, that's the biggest type of character. If you can go out and demand the ball under pressure. He was a centre half as well, but very, very graceful on the ball. Just a couple of young boys. Big Jackal was a good big lad, great lad actually. You know, always had a smile on his face, always trained hard, and there wasn't short of a few characters, as much as he wasn't in my team, but we're in the same dressing room. Slaney was hilarious. Like, I mean, like this boy was, my God, like. I'm sure you've seen all the open goal stuff of him, like. But I probably don't even touch the surface. He was some boy. Like he was now, to be fair, he was older than me, and he was I think he went out on loan a few times, so I didn't have much dealings with him. But we'd have been in the same dressing room for a period of time. He was brilliant. I probably can't tell you any stories, to be honest, mate. On this anyway. But there was put it this way, there was no short of a few characters. In both dressing rooms, I would imagine that I never travelled with the first team or anything, so I couldn't really comment. But just seeing the boys about and how they went about it, there was a big. I have to probably give Paddy McCord a mention as well, because when I was a kid there, Paddy was one of the ones that never would have passed me. Always come up to ask how I was getting on, and see, when you say who was the players you trained with, I didn't even mention him, and I can't believe I haven't, because this guy was ridiculously good. Like his first touch, the way he took a ball past people. See, when he got the ball, you wouldn't go within 4 yards off him, because you knew he was going to just make an absolute see you next Tuesday off you, or nutmeg you, or do something. He was unbelievable. Got to play 1 or 2 reserve games with him too, and probably the most gifted player I've ever seen live.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that one. I think he scored some memorable goals to Celtic. The only problem that seemed to be was his fitness. It's not something that struck you when you were training with him. What was he fit as the other players, or was he as quick? But he never seemed to have lightning pace, but he just seemed to make mugs out of people.
No, he wasn't a big athlete, but I mean, if you know football, you find a way of getting him in your team, don't you? Like 100%. You just have to get him on the pitch, because he wins a game in a split second. So that was the one that always baffled me as well, Steve. I don't know how he didn't play more games, but anyway, who am I to say that? But in terms of ability, different level from anything I've ever seen, and even still.
I think he could take players on in his sleep. The way he goes past people, it's never like lightning skills, or like, do you know what I mean, like rainbow flicks and all that. He just takes it past them with his feet. His feet.
Just like a low centre of gravity, he can dip his shoulder left and right. Then a very throwback player. I'm not comparing him to him, but if you watch clips of Jimmy Johnston, it's that type. You know, he doesn't do step overs. He just takes a ball and drags it past people, and that's a joy to watch. A joy to watch. And most kids now, most footballers now are robots. Certainly in the Premier League, they're robots. They're just big athletes.
Yeah.
And it's very rare to see a player like that. You know, so. Hopefully we can produce a few more, but he was some player, man, honestly.
Yeah, 100%. But see as well, obviously you said there about Paul Slane, and you can't mention really any stories that he was involved in due to his media profile at the minute. But if there's any stories within the time you were there, what stands out? Any funny moments? Any pranks on players? Does anything stand out for you?
My memory's shocking, by the way, so please excuse me, mate. There was just around about the dressing room, and I can't remember whose car it was. It might have been Bruden at Tige. It might have been his car, or that's Robbie Thompson. I can remember one day at Lennoxtown anyway. So driving in, it was Audi A3 or something. And you know the stickers, mate, that you have in your office and you write notes on? The boys went out and covered his car. So his car's black. They covered his car in multicoloured stickers and parked it in between the goal on the 3G pitch. So when we were up the stairs and we're looking, the boys are like, "Oh, look out the window there." And there's an Audi A3 parked in the middle of the 3G pitch at the front of Lennoxtown, in between the goal. Stuff like that went on every day. The banter was unbelievable. It was the best job in the world, honestly. Now, since then, I've went on to work in like office environments and all as well, but that is the best job in the world, honestly. Unbelievable.
Well, if someone could take someone's car and put post-it notes over it and stick it in the goal, I mean, that is the best job ever. Take that. Oh, man, honestly, that's quality. But see as well, Patrick, obviously we haven't really touched upon the coaches and stuff that were involved with you. What coach was a great influence for you in and around Celtic Park or Lennoxtown or Barrowfield? Who's the one you took like most inspiration from when you were learning?
There was a coach called Mio Drag. He used to play for Motherwell. I'm near sure Mio won the European Cup. It was in the 80s or something. Can't remember anyway. he was there and he took his 16s. He was always great with me. And that was mostly when I was going over back and forth and I was still living here. I will probably have to say John Kennedy, to be honest, because John always took time to try and, I was a centre half, and John always took time to try and, improve you as a player, and he was always checking in on you, and he delivered a great session. He spoke really well. He just had everything about him. And then you also had so much respect for him as well, because I'm probably at the age where I seen him play. I'm sure you are yourself.
Yeah.
And so you just right away you've got that respect for him. Not that you didn't have respect for all the coaches, of course you did. But the likes of him and Chris McCart, Tommy McIntyre, Stevie Frail as well was a great guy and done great things for Celtic. And then you've Danny McGrain, Danny McGrain is just the absolute legend of all legends. He's just kind of there putting his input in. He's in the background, but again, Danny does an unbelievable job. So you weren't short of a few decent coaches there, like.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think now, especially, I always touch upon in the podcast about the youth academy. It's just so important going forward, and I think for me, the next management team needs to get that spot on, because the whole transfer situation is going to change regarding Brexit. But just touching upon the pathway to the first team now, you named a few cracking players within the youth setup. So you have Paul George, John Harlan, Jackson Irvine, Stuart Finney, yourself, Patrick McNally, Cal McGregor, Owen O'Connell, Liam Henderson, Tony Watt, Marcus Fraser. Did you get the sense when you were training that there was an opportunity for young guys to progress, or was it they got so far and had to make the choice either to stay and stagnate or move on to a different club?
I think there definitely is a pathway. The first thing is about that pathway is you have to be good enough to go and make it. Because if you're not staying in a club like Celtic, let's be honest. Which I found out. But in terms of players like Callum and Owen and Tony and the Hendo and the rest of the boys that actually went on and played a wee bit, they were top players. Like, so yes, if you're good enough, you're old enough, you'll be thrown in. I just think it's getting harder and harder over the years, even from now. To be some player to even make it in. Transfer budgets are going up. They're banning players from all over Europe. It's really, really difficult. But as you say, the answer to the question is there definitely is a pathway, yes. But whether you're good enough to make it, that's up to you.
Yeah, I understand that argument as well, but I think what I'm more frustrated with, especially now, there seems to be a reluctance to put the youth in. Look at the season Celtic have had, to be honest with you, Patrick. It's been a shambles. And you look around within the squad depth, and Stephen Wells got his chance by luck. He never really got it by doing anything. And look at what he's done. He's probably one of our best players towards the end of the season. And the likes of David Turnbull, it just seems to me, at the moment, there just seems to be like a reluctance to put the youth in or give them a chance. But I don't know, maybe that's not for me to say. As you said, if they're good enough, they will get in. And I think that's probably the right way to look at it. But I mean, you need that pathway to be open and clear for players here in the youth academy, in my opinion. But as you rightly touched upon, Patrick, your time with the Celtic Football Club came to an end. So, what was that process like for you, and how did you cope with it? Were you down about it? Did you beat yourself up about it? What was the process in your mind when that happened?
It was difficult. Like, look, let me put this out there first of all. I wasn't good enough to play for Celtic, and I know that now. So there was no any grudges held. But yeah, I mean, you spend a few years somewhere, and you become real close to it. I already had a real love for Celtic anyway, so it was tough. But I don't think at that age you can dwell on it. You know what I mean? I don't think you have time to, because if you're out of football for 6 months, you're forgotten about. So you need to get back on it somehow. So yeah, it was tough. It knocked me for six a wee bit without really even knowing. It's only like now when you look back that you probably wasn't right in the head there for a couple of months after that. It was probably still playing in the back of my mind,
Yeah.
But as I say, ultimately, was I good enough to play for Celtic first team on a regular basis? No, absolutely not. But I still cherish every sort of memory I have from it, So, and I'm enjoying it. I have a good life now. I'm enjoying it. So, I don't have any regrets.
Exactly. There's no time for regrets in life, Patrick. You're 100% right, and I think it's right as well to point out that it will affect you leaving a big club like Celtic, and you're kind of stuck in limbo. Which brings me on to my next point. What was it like adjusting back to playing in the Irish League and back to the part-time training side of things? Was that something that you found hard to deal with going back to that, or was it something that you took in your stride?
No, struggled with it badly. Mentally, physically, couldn't cope with it. And it wasn't just, I don't mean playing in the league. I mean everything that comes with it. You know, you're only training a couple of nights a week, where you're used to training 5 days a week. The nutritional side of things, I sort of let go a wee bit. The game's completely different. We were getting taught a game and see, I started at Cliftonville, then I went to Celtic, so I don't know what it's like to lose a game of football. So all I ever did was win. So again, you have to deal with the defeat. You have to sort of experience it to learn from it, I think. So when I came back, no, I struggled for a wee way, but after a wee bit of time, I did adjust to it. It's very, very tough. I had a job, and you're playing midweek games away at Coleraine, and you're working to 5 o'clock, and you're straight in the car, and you're eating a bit of pasta at a Tesco, no meal deals, and you're driving down the motorway. See stuff like that. That just wouldn't happen to first team football. I always say it. Part-time football is a lot harder than first team or full-time football, and I firmly believe it. I don't mean the standards or the standard. I don't mean that at all. What I mean is everything that comes with it.
It's graft, isn't it? It's the pure graft that they have to go through every day to go to training, get out of work early. As you said, you're flying about Tesco trying to find out a sandwich for a quid, just to feed yourself.
A quid? Oh, yeah,
do you know what I mean?
But the wages you get in the Irish League.
But if I'm right in what I'm saying, did you go back to Cliftonville? Didn't you go back for a period on loan to Cliftonville as well?
Yes, so just before I left Celtic, I went and spent a bit of time on loan. 2014 season, so it was the last title Brazil won. God rest him. So again, you're in that sort of environment, in that dressing room, and you learned a lot because you're just with born winners. That team is probably Cliftonville's best ever team. I don't think anyone will argue with that. So I spent a wee bit of time on loan, and that gave me a wee bit of an insight into what sort of men's senior football was like, you know. So again, brilliant. Didn't play a lot of games. Certainly didn't play as much as I would have liked to, but again, I was probably an 18-year-old kid. And looking back, you probably can't blame the coaching staff there, like, you know.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. And in terms of where we're at now, you said you're injured there. So what I want to ask you before we move on to your advice and stuff, the younger players coming through now. So the mentality side of things that you learned with Celtic when you were training, have you took that with you throughout your career? So this injury, it's a bad injury by all accounts, but is the mentality side of things something you're strong with now?
I would say it's probably now one of my biggest strengths. Whereas it wasn't always, but I would say now with all the experience that I've gained over the time, I've had for a few knocks in football as well, which is why I think I'm now able to deal with this type of injury, for example, which I've never experienced before. But it was hell, to be honest, you know, when that injury happened, and then when we got the MRI scan and found out the extent of the damage, it wasn't great having that meeting with a physio and my manager. But as you say, all those times before, and you don't even realise it, but just coming back from setbacks and knocks, and I have to be honest, this is a piece of piss for me, just because of what I experienced before. Whereas, see if it had been the other way around, and I didn't have many setbacks or knocks, I think I would have really struggled. So, as I say, I'm 4 months in. I've started doing rehab. I'm out of the leg brace and all now, so things are looking up, thankfully.
That's great to hear. It's great to hear you're on the road to recovery as well. I mean, that's the most important thing. Obviously, your health and well-being and getting back playing football regularly. But what would be a bit of advice you would give a younger you, like a younger yourself, or any type of player coming through the systems at no age? What would be that advice if they're chasing the big time?
See, that's I wouldn't use that term, if you get me. So when I was a kid, when I was coming through then, obviously, and trying to make my way, it was probably the start of social media, that era. So you get caught up in, oh, wow, look at the car he's driving, or look at the house I have, I want that. Do you know what I mean? You start being motivated by the wrong things. So
100%.
That's what was motivating me. Whereas seeing in reflection, what should have been motivating me was I want to win a trophy with Celtic. I want to
Yeah.
earn that big contract, which is going to set my family up. I want to do that. So that's the biggest bit of advice I would give the kids. See all this stuff on social media, people saying you're brilliant, this, you've got a car, you this. That's just outside noise. You just need to find a way to blank that out and focus on what's actually going to get you there. So I just think if you do all that and you eventually do all that sort of stuff, takes care of itself. That would definitely be my biggest advice for any kid coming through now. Focus on the right things, and don't let outside influences motivate you, because in the long term, it's just nonsense, to be honest. But you don't know that when you're a kid. As I say, you don't. You're very naive, and you're constantly learning every day. That would be my biggest bit of advice.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly summed up. Don't focus on the money. Focus on the prize at the end of it. No, I mean, look at the trophies you go win. Even if it's not football, all walk of life. Don't be always focusing on the money and the social media things, the pictures people put up. At the end of the day, the majority of people who put them pictures up aren't happy within their own lives, and that you need to be happy within yourself before you can be happy posting stuff out. And I think that's perfectly summed up, Patrick. And that's got a cracking bit of advice for any young person listening. But just to move on, the end of the show on a light-hearted way, a wee bit of fun. I told you to try and find me or try and give me an ultimate five-a-side team from players you played with, trained with, or watched live. So over to you, Patrick. What we're going with?
Right. So I'm going to go with a team that I've played with rather than a team that I've watched.
Okay.
Right. So this was tough. Right. So we'll go with we'll play a 1-1-2-1. So we'll just go. We'll go all out attack.
Right.
So in goal, I'll go with Connor Davlin. Obviously, you've been to Cliftonville games. You're going to know who CC is. He's the best goalkeeper I've ever played with. What a player! I mean, see him with a ball at his feet. He could play centre midfield. He's that good.
He's good at pinging, like
unbelievable. So I'll stick Big One in its centre half. I'll stick myself on the bench, and not as good as him. So Owen will go in his centre half just because I'm versatile and how good he is on the ball. And then I'll go Owen O'Connell. So
Owen O'Connell. Oh yeah, it's okay. I'll just make sure.
So he's centre half. Yep. And then the two in front of him, we'll go with Marty Donnelly, who played with at Cliftonville and Larne, who again you all know. What a player! Honestly,
what a player!
One of the best players I've ever played with. Incredible, and I really mean that. Very, very similar to the likes of Colin McGregor, who's a left-footed, but obviously he plays further forward in a 10 role. But I'll play him beside Colin McGregor, so them two will play there. And then up top, I'm going to go with Liam Boyce as my striker.
Boyce.
So again, Boyce's definitely the best striker I've ever played football with. Ability wise, I mean, he's just scored against Celtic there in the Scottish Cup final a couple of months ago, didn't he? So I'm sure the Celtic listeners will know who he is. Anyone who's from here or has watched the Irish League over the years will certainly know who he is. I don't think there's been anyone better in the Irish League anyway, and he's went on to have a great career. So fair play to him. So that'll be my five, and then I'll stick myself on the bench, and then you can be the manager of your team. So.
so we're going Connor Devlin. That's why I'm right. Owen O'Connell.
Yes.
You said Colin McGregor and Marty Donnelly, didn't you?
Colin McGregor and Marty Donnelly.
And Liam Boyce. That's such a five-a-side team. That is brilliant.
Great five-a-side. They're probably all the best five-a-side players as well. There's no way I'm playing in a five-a-side team because you can't head the ball in it. So that rules me out. So I'll go on the bench in case one of them get injured.
I mean, that's fantastic. And Liam Boyce, as you said, he's been linked with Celtic in the past as well. So, I mean, his status as a striker in the Irish League, even playing for Burton in the English leagues and now up in Hearts, he's been a fantastic, prolific striker as well. Marty Donnelly, everyone knows Marty Donnelly in the Irish League scene. And Owen O'Connell, I've seen him play for Celtic. I think he played in the European game against that Hapwell Beersheva team at one point, and he did. He put in a fantastic performance. But Patrick, thanks for coming on to the show. Have you enjoyed your time at the end of Celts?
Absolutely loved it, mate. And keep up the good work. I'll continue tuning in every week for the podcast.
100%, man. Every Tuesday and Friday. Don't forget that. I'll be sending them anyway. Don't worry. But it's been fantastic. It's been fantastic having you on. We've had some great chat, some great insight as well to what goes on behind the scenes of Celtic Football Club in terms of Barrowfeed and Lennoxtown. So, Patrick, I thank yourself and to all the listeners until Tuesday when our regular podcast is up. Stay well and keep safe. Hail, hail.